and we're going to talk about leadership, particularly leadership that works. We're going to go over some of the concepts that will help you as a leader in your business. A little bit about me. Some of you already know me for being involved with Drive for a while. I am one of the coaches here at Drive. Although I don't do much of actively coaching these days, I'm in different parts of the company. So they sort of plug me in wherever they need me, and I like, it gives me a little bit freedom and different opportunities. But I have an extensive understanding and experience in terms of leadership development. I started my coaching career in leadership development field. I worked for a company called Linkage, who was one of the founders of the leadership development field. And I did deliver workshops with them. I coached individual clients there. I got my coaching degree from a school called Coaching Training Institute, which is actually one of the top schools that teaches coaching. And leadership is something that I've personally been, interested in quite a bit. So I'm happy to share some of those thoughts with you, with my good friend, John, who's going to be my co-host. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm John Dowda. I'm also a coach here at Drive. I'm haven't been here as long as Erkan, but I have been here a while. I came to Drive from having run family business and my own business for more years than I want to admit. I think it helps. I started when I was 12 years old. I was measuring KPIs for the family business, even though I didn't know they were called KPIs. I ran a company in Monterrey, Mexico for about 20 years. And I am also, as Tony pointed out, a workshop instructor. I am currently doing a lot of Spanish workshops here at Drive. It's something we're very excited about. Our Spanish programs are coming along very strong. And I'm happy to be here at the feet of the wise man, Erkan, and listen to what he has to say today. So back to you, Erkan.
Brilliant. So the way we're going to structure this today is a little bit different than some of the webinars, at least I've been a part of. We're going to be a bit more active in terms of your involvement as the audience. So please keep your microphones muted. At some points during the presentation, I may ask a question to the audience, and just try to raise your hand if you have something to say. For those of you who don't know how to exactly do that, you can click a button for some of the reactions on the bottom part of your screen and raise your hand, and then we'll go from there. And there's a chat box that one of my colleagues, Carolyn, will be coordinating or handling as well. So you can type your questions there. There'll be information put in there covering or links about some of the stuff that I will be talking about. But so it's going to be interactive, and it's going to be about communication. And I want to start with this quote by James Hume. For those of you who wonder who this guy was, he was an author and a speechwriter for U.S. presidents, and including Ronald Reagan. And he was also a professor of language and leadership at the University of Southern California. He authored numerous books, but he did say something that really is very important when it comes to leadership, because every time you speak, you are auditioning for leadership, he said. So this is a very clear understanding for all of us about the power of words. And, and I want to add here, power of words, like communication doesn't only happen with just spoken words. There's different ways of, communicating aside from just the words themselves, but your body language or your, other, ways of how you handle your body, and sort of like how you are doing what you're doing as you're saying these things. It's very, very critical. So we have to realize, if you want to be an effective leader, it's very important to understand that every time you communicate, you are auditioning for leadership. And there's another quote that he said that I want to bring about here as well. That he said that the art of communication is the language of leadership. So communication and leadership go hand in hand. So therefore, it's very, very critical. In this particular quote, the art of communication punctuates the critical nature of communication to effective and successful leadership. So everything that we're going to speak about beyond this point is going to be revolving around this particular concept of communication and effective leadership. And maybe I can ask my friend John here in terms of like his points about adding to this particular point, so we can enrich our conversation from this point before we go to the next concept or next understanding.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erkan. I have learned through trial and error to be careful with my communication as a leader. I made many mistakes as a young man running my own business. I have a tendency to be a dreamer, and I have a tendency for my mouth to run on beyond, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And so one of the great important lessons that I learned about leadership, you want to share your visions and dreams with people, but you want to be very concrete about what is going to happen. So, we want to pay everybody more. We want to isn't everybody's making more next week. So part of one of the important parts of leadership is learning how to correctly express that I have a dream and a vision that I want you to be part of without putting a false promise on it for people. And I learned that a very hard way. And I think that's one of the important things that we can take away.
Brilliant. Right. So now that we understand, and clearly, like this, it's really a big deal that every time you speak, you audition for leadership. You also then have to understand the concept of your own leadership philosophy. Okay, and that's the next thing we're going to talk about here, because whether you're aware of it or not, or realize it or not, or even put it in words, or even such a like concrete concept or not, there is a philosophy of your leadership. And pretty much all of you here are leaders. You're owners, for whatever I can see. Most of you are shop owners, if not all, and you lead teams, and you have people that work with you, for you. And not only that, most of you are probably, family members, and you have a family, and you're a leader of that family as well. So it's not only work related here, it's beyond that. And there's a leadership philosophy. So what I want you to right now to think with, at this point, is a particular situation that I'm going to ask you to imagine yourself as the new member of the team coming to your shop. And the shop owner is your new leader. And I want you to think with like, as that new person coming into this shop, and you see the shop owner as the new leader, what are some of the questions you would ask that person in relation to that, to understanding of that philosophy? So again, what are some things that's going to make you think to get a better understanding of this person's leadership philosophy? And maybe at this point, I can open the room for some of the answers you might have to this question. But what would you like to know about the shop owner? I mean, you are the shop owner. You're putting yourself in the position of a new team member, and you want to know about the leadership philosophy of this person. What are some of the things you would like to ask, question-wise? And don't be shy. I mean, we're all learning here, and
what are the leaders' core values?
what are your core values? Okay, brilliant.
Daily expectations.
Daily expectations of you as the new team member from you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts?
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I think that one of the things that I would want to know, if you're trying to keep good morale and good leadership, how often do you do performance reviews, or how often do you, or what kind of things do you do, for your employees? Fringe benefits, because that's a lot of where we retrieve and get our staff, and that determines whether we keep them or not.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all. Very well. Yes. So I think there is a few ways to look at it. One of which is like specific areas, like what are the expectations, and what are some of the, employee performance review structure that you have. I'd like to go into a little bit more into the specific parts of the core values part, because we're talking about, specific leadership qualities in here. And therefore, like some of the questions that you want to ask, and it's very much related to the core values, is like, who are you as a leader? Like what, like as we're talking about the building a philosophy, your, part of your philosophy includes tasks like, or specific, duties like doing, performance reviews, going over the expectations, or having a job description that sort of like goes into that. But what we're going for here is a bit more like, who are you as a leader? Like, what do you believe? Like, where are you headed? Right? What are the things you want to do? That's what they really want to know, whether they're aware or not. But you are here, mostly shop owners and business leaders. You have to think with the visionary part of your situation here. So those are the questions that they're really wondering at the end, or at least you should at least try to give an answer for, not specifically, hey, I believe in this, or I am this, or I'm headed there, this specifically, but just like John said, when you talk about your vision, you have to communicate it the right way, right? You're auditioning for leadership every time you speak. So those are the questions that you would want to know, and people want to know in terms of their new leader. So I want you to like note this and sort of like think about this later on, like, who are you really as a leader? What do you believe? Where are you headed? Those are the things that they're going to want to know. And I'm going to ask you to mute yourself if you're not speaking, so we don't have very much noise background. Uh, so I can do that, and maybe we can do that. So that's what it is, okay? And from that point on, another way to at least to get a better understanding of your own leadership philosophy is to get an understanding of what it really means to have and to become this, exemplary leader. Like there are 5 practices of exemplary leadership. And this is done by studies, and it's developed through the consistent practice of these behaviors and skills that start from somewhere unexpected. And I think the whole idea about my own leadership development understanding from the perspective of, teaching this stuff is there are 3 specific areas of leading when it comes to, leadership. One is self, leading self. So therefore it starts right there, right? And these consistent practice of behaviors and skills start from yourself. So you have to really understand, become self-aware and understand, your own, how do you lead yourself, right? How do you come across? And then it goes into leading people. Like, how do you lead people? That's the second element of, effective leadership. And the third one is leading business because we're talking about business here. So when it comes to, setting exemplary leadership, these are the 5 practices that studies have found that leaders are at their best when they model the way, they inspire, they challenge, and they enable each other, others, and they encourage the heart. But I'm going to ask you, John, like, from your perspective as to how do you see yourself and the clients that you coach in relation to what we're seeing here?
Well, I have a quote as well. Mine is from John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So to that point, the 5 steps that we have here that are important, what I really feel like as a group, not myself only, but all of the team at Drive, we work to inspire. And in order to inspire, we have to model the way, we have to challenge, we have to enable, we have to encourage the heart, which I do think is also a very important part of leadership, is understanding that there is a human inside there. They're not just a number, they're a human being, our employees that we're leading. And we need to encourage their dreams, their goals, and we need to work together so that all of what we do helps inspire where they want to go with their lives and where they want to be. And one thing that worked really, really well for me as a leader, I would always talk to my employees about what they wanted from their lives separate from working for me. If they had dreams to go and do something else, I learned the hard way that if working for me became a routine that they got stuck in, their performance was going to suffer. They were going to affect the people around them. Whereas if working for me, I could help them achieve whatever their dream was somewhere else, a rising tide raises all boats. And so that rising tide made everyone in the system work better together and feel like there was a person who cared about them and their development.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'm going to go into a little bit about the specifics about each of these things. Like, so we just don't look at model the way, like what by modeling the way, very similar or related to what John was saying too. What we're talking about here is that, you set the example, like you are the leader. Wherever you walk into your business, whatever mood you're in, whatever, type of frame of mind you're in, those feelings and emotions are, infectious. You are going to start spreading that, you set the mode. And if you're not in the right state of mind, guess what? You're not giving the right, infectious opportunity to others. They're going to model from you. So you got to set the right example by aligning your actions with the shared values that you have. That's modeling the way. In terms of, inspiring, it's you want to envision the future by imagining those exciting possibilities and enlist others to that vision. And that, again, art of communication, talking about it, not just words, but the way you present yourself. And challenging means like, all right, we can do better. These are the opportunities we could do. It's not just like, oh, this is how we've always done it. All right, take risks. People respond to that. And they want to see you do it. And when you mean enabling others to act, well, increase the self-determination that they have, develop their competence. And I think that's a big deal. In my years of coaching, in the last 8 years, hundreds of clients that I've coached at Drive, really the biggest issue, and I think to this day, is about I don't have anybody else to turn these jobs over. And I know some of you, I'm looking at some of you here that have really achieved turning some of these hats over. I know, Keith, when you came in, you were just, doing everything yourself. And I know, at least last I spoke with you, you're not really doing everything yourself anymore for a while now, right?
Yeah, I just kind of manage day to day. I got other people doing most of the work nowadays. I'm basically semi-retired, but I'm here every day.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it's about, you enable others, you teach them how to do their stuff. And encouraging the heart means, well, recognize their contributions, celebrate their opportunities. So when you look at this thing, you can think about, which of these leadership practices and behaviors are you most comfortable using as a leader and why? And what can you strengthen in these areas, the ones that you're already good at that you see? Or where do you think there are opportunities for improvements? So, very, very important to think with that. And then you can sort of these are proven to be, important practices. So think about where you are and think about where you want to be. So I want to open this to discussion again here too. Like, who here would like to share their experience about looking at this and sort of combining to their day-to-day and their own leadership practices? Mike, are you here? Mike Button?
I knew you were gonna call on me. I model the way is usually where I start. I've got my managers here in this webinar with me, so they can either call out bullshit, but and Denise is here, my right-hand man, right-hand lady. Anyway, model the way. So I started out as a tech when I opened the shop, fixing cars. So I'm not as good at fixing cars as I used to be, I'll admit, but a work ethic, showing up, being there, helping where I can, getting dirty. I still do that on occasion. I really try to inspire my managers with my ideas and their ideas and getting us working together on the same plane. I've had a great time with it. I've enjoyed it, and I want to continue and strengthen it. I feel like there's always more to add, and I'm just here to show the big picture, and then hopefully get them to show the staff the big picture as well. And I know they model as well as, you know, being leaders. So that's where I start.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. I think there's a reason that's the one at top. That it kind of like one of the very important ones. You gotta set the example. So very, very true. All right. So think about where you are strong, or what type of practices you feel yourself you're exhibiting mostly, and where do you want to sort of like improve upon in terms of like having improving your leadership capabilities when it comes to these 5 practices. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit about like, moving from like management from like doing the things to actually managing into leading, because it's a process, right? And therefore, what I'm sharing with you here is sort of like a model, a pyramid model of management, or the goal of management. So the goal of the management, so that you have a better understanding of what you're looking at, is to move towards the top of the pyramid. That's your goal as a manager and a leader, okay? And there are 3 different sections of this pyramid. At the bottom section, you have the crew, okay? And all these sections are very, very important, very valuable. So the bottom section of the pyramid has the crew, and the middle part has the management, and the top part has the owner when it comes to, being the owner of an automotive repair shop, or a collision shop, or a restoration shop, or truck shop, or towing business. So when it comes to this field. So at the bottom, you have the crew, and the crew does what it does is they execute the job duties that ideally have been given to them in writing, right? And with job descriptions, and they adhere to the policies that have been put together in writing again, and that they're complied by, and they actually assist each other to achieve those daily and weekly goals. And then in the middle, you have management. The management is busy with executing the owner's vision, does the short-range planning like in daily and weekly goals, and then sets them and enforces the policies so that everybody's operating at that right level, and the management controls the day-to-day operation. At the top, you have the owner, who ideally, in small businesses, the top part and the middle part are kind of together in a way, but to really become an owner of a business, if you're spending most of your time at the top, like as an owner, when you're laying out your vision wherever you want to go as a business, and what your playbook is in terms of the policies and procedures and the way your shop operates, like how your business does its stuff, and does the long range planning as to where you want to go with your business, with your life, and with your team. So what I want you to think right now is, when you look at this, each person to think about on a daily and weekly basis, where you spend most of your time. In what part of this pyramid do you spend most of your time? And you can be very honest with yourself, and it could be different for everyone. There are some advanced shop owners that I personally know here that might be spending more time towards the upper part, but really take a look at this and figure out where you're spending your time mostly. So I'll leave you to think, and you can put it in the chat box as to where you think you are. Like everybody, just put in the chat box in what, like top, middle, bottom. Where do you spend most of your time on any given week in terms of what you're doing at your shop? Okay.
Top 2.
JM Auto Repair, top 2. All right.
Arkan, while we're doing that, I'm curious how you feel like the playbook really comes into play as the top piece of that pyramid.
Well, I think there's a reason that it's actually at the top. So it's very, very, very critical piece of this whole thing. And it's the owner's duty to put your playbook together.
So that's
Uh,
writing the playbook, not executing the playbook.
well, putting it together, right? Exactly. The execution of it is management.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, so
Right.
putting it together for the middle of the pyramid to put into practice.
Exactly.
Okay. Top two, combination of all three, data control operation, short range planning. All three, mostly in management moving toward owner.
Good.
It's good.
So your goal is to move towards the top for everyone. Like, and it's important to understand where you are. It becomes like that self-awareness or the self-leading. You have to lead yourself. Uh, and it's definitely very understanding, as a small business owner, like top two are kind of like I said, like similar. But you as a manager or a shop owner, you really want to stay away from the bottom part. Okay. And you want to sort of like essentially move from doing to leading. All right. So that is a big concept. So this is this journey that you're on, from doing to leading. And we're going to talk about that next. So wherever you are, your journey is going to be including moving from doing to leading. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Very well. Okay. So before I go in, so that I want to hear again from the room a little bit here. What do you think are some of the differences between a doer and a leader? And feel free to like chime in.
I think our expectations or description of a doer versus leader are much different than what the guys in the back would say that it is.
True, but yeah, exactly. I agree with that. I'm asking to you as the shop owner or the manager or the leader of the business, like, what do you think a doer does, and and what do you think a leader does? And again, like doing the work is probably the doing part, right? But just think about this a little bit. And I'll give you some examples that will clarify it a little bit, but I want to ask it first what your concept is.
Concept is the manager is the one that's leading the way the shops run, not working on fixing cars anymore. If you're in the back, all you're doing is repairing cars, you're not repairing the business. So as a leader, you have to repair any issues that come up in the business and make sure there's people taken care of and getting good workflow for you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Keith.
There's a couple of notes, Archon.
Yeah, I read it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making
Yeah.
sure you see them.
Thank you. Yeah. So Kevin says a doer executes, a leader sets the expectation and delegates. Brilliant. And John says, as a leader, I get frustrated when my doers don't do it the way that was shown, and I end up doing it myself. Which brings me to a very, very important point that actually I don't know if my friend Tony is here right now. I mean, it's something that you may have heard of, but Tony said it beautifully, and I want to just sort of like acknowledge him for saying this. There is this concept that, or the, that's been talked about that says, if you want something get done right, you better do it yourself, right? And in words of my good friend Tony, there's really nothing more misunderstood or in my opinion, wrong than this. Like, really, that is one of the biggest maxims that if you want it done, you got to do it yourself. How much does that put you back? And I think, Rod, you're right. A leader helps get it done, but it doesn't mean that when your people don't do it, you get frustrated and you end up doing yourself. So, John, I understand your frustration, but you have to, again, look at yourself. You have to start with leading self. Like, what is it that you need to be doing more differently? And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, so that people do it right the first time. And that goes into playbook a little bit. But, there's some other comments. A leader helps get it done, Rod says. And Kevin says a leader removes obstacles and provides all the tools to execute. And right, so a little bit more of the specific examples, some of the differences between a doer and a leader. A doer gets the job, does the job himself, and leader gets others to do it. And a doer seeks compliance, but a leader seeks commitment. Like, I want you to do this. How can I be the better leader for you to be, inspiring you instead of pushing you to do it? I mean, are you pushing to get it done, or are you inspiring to get it done the right way? And the doer focuses on work at hand, where a leader looks toward the future and asks questions instead of, answering the questions. As a doer, your focus is more on the work at hand instead of looking toward the future. But as a leader, you need to take a more strategic focus towards the work and the team as a whole. So, John, I mean, I want you to chime in a little bit from your perspective of your journey in this case. And
Sure.
Yeah.
I've made the mistake many times, and I've also heard Mr. Whistler on the topic of if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself, and what a horrible fallacy that is, and how incorrect that is, as far as, that's one of the worst things you can do as a manager, is insist on doing everything yourself. As a leader, it is our job to bring other people into development, to develop them, to inspire them and push them forward. And nothing makes an organization work better than when people progress. And when employees see the people around them progressing, it pushes them to progress as well. So if there's any kind of a positive element in your employee, the other people around progressing is going to push them to progress as well. So bringing people to, getting commitment instead of compliance, and inspiring people instead of pushing them, all of that works together to help make a team. And at some point, Erkan, where you see fit, we've got Shannon Farrell here, who's one of our clients, the owner of Beach Haven in Tennessee. He runs an incredible team, and he's a good team leader. So at some point, when you're talking about leading a team, I think Shannon would be a good one to call on too.
Brilliant. Sure. Yeah.
Can I add something to
Exactly.
that?
Please.
I would simply say that based on everything you guys have just said, I totally agree with you, but there's only two reasons why somebody won't do it the way you want it done. They either don't know how, or they're not in agreement. And those are the two things that get forgotten. If you don't know how to do it the way that, if I want someone to do something a certain way and they simply don't know how to do it, then they're going to try their best and they're going to do it differently. Or they might do it the way I want, but it would be by accident maybe. Or they're just not, they don't agree. And when you have very intelligent, very highly trained master technicians that have spent their lives doing that job, there may be some disagreement. They may just be like, no, I think I know best. And that's not an unreasonable mindset to have. But then you have a job to get them to buy in. You have to get them to understand that there's a way things are done in your shop. Right? So there's two elements. Make sure they fully understand what they're supposed to do and how to do it, and that they actually agree with doing it. And if those things aren't in place, they will not comply with your wishes. It just won't ever happen. Anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Tony.
Yep.
And John, I see your note that you're afraid to hold them accountable and losing them because they're great employees. I just want to spend a little bit talking about that because you put the note, but great employees generally don't mind being held accountable, if the rules are right. And actually better employees are okay with that. But ultimately, this, I'm going to ask you a question about this. Like, what is your leadership philosophy? Maybe as a result of what we're doing today, you can get a little bit more solid on your end for your own philosophy. And if your own leadership philosophy is like, deal with people who are offensive, just because you need them, as opposed to, well, I want to create a culture here that people are okay holding themselves accountable. It starts with you, right? It starts with your own leadership philosophy. So it's a matter of like how much you want to deal with or not. And don't be afraid. Because that brings me to the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is what are, some of the characteristics of admired leaders. And this is a big list, okay? But to your, actually, let me go back, sorry. To your point, John, courageous. So you cannot be afraid. That's one of them, but that's just one of them. So these are the characteristics of admired leaders. And it's a big list. Take a good look. And in fact, maybe John, you can talk about how you want to go about like letting our audience use this list.
Okay, so here's a suggestion for you guys. Here's what we'd like to do. You can either take a screenshot, or if that's a little complicated on the technical end, take a picture with your cell phone, which is easier. But what we want to ask you to do is save this list some way. Take a screenshot, take a picture of it. And in a calm moment, when you're not under the bright lights of a webinar and you don't feel pressure, we don't want to put you on the spot. But basically, our idea is to go through this list and look at the different items and think about, where am I the strongest and where am I the weakest? And where can I improve? Which of these seem more important to me? Because as Erkan mentioned, it's a big list, right? So I would say, for each of us, we're going to have 5 or 6 of these that are really going to resonate as these are the more important things to me. But I think here's what I know about my nature, if not all human nature. The ones that are more important to me are the ones I'm naturally good at. I would say, because I'm a coach at Drive, the ones that don't seem as important to you are probably the ones we're not naturally good at, and that those are worth looking at too. How can I be stronger in that area? So if you will, please screenshot the list or take a picture with your cell phone. And when you have a spare moment, a calm, quiet moment, I think one of the best things you can get from what we've talked about in this webinar and the overall ideas of what we're laying out here, think about where you fit in each of these and where you can be stronger.
Thank you. Yeah, do that after the webinar. But one thing I want to do now, I just started like doing this, and it's not an easy task, but I want everyone to put in the chat box the one that they would rank number one, like for them as far as the important characteristic goes. Like what is your top one? For me, as an to be an effective leader, like combining self-leadership, people leadership, and business leadership, like I would say for me, determined would be the one. How about others? Put it in the chat box. I want to see. And it's not one is more important than the other. It's very personal. But let's just get an understanding.
And
Caring. Go ahead, John.
to your point, Erkan, although I think determined and forward-looking are very similar, for me, it would be it would be a combination of determined and forward-looking, because those the two kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. We see honest and caring quite a bit. We see determined, loyal, independent, supportive, honest, fair-minded, inspiring, dependable, caring. determined, cooperative.
Yep.
Yeah. Broad-minded. Yeah. So all these are very important. And, you know, as a leader, I think John's suggestion is great. You know, just sort of like look at this and do exactly what he suggested to get a better understanding. Look at the ones that you're good at, the ones that you want to get better at. The idea here is that, John, right, thank you for being here. You know, this is an area where you improve upon your leadership skills. And, you know, everything gets better by focusing on it and doing something about it. And, you know, if you sort of like want to get better at something, focus on it and do the exercise and do the execution. And that's great. And you can please feel free to email us here. All right. So that's that part. The next thing I want to talk about in relation to this is you know, when you look back at this, and I don't know how that red thing happened. Thank you. You know, oops. These characteristics of admired leaders, it's a long list, but in many ways, they culminate to one sort of like filter through two main things. In fact, one really, really very important characteristic, and that is personal credibility. All right. As a good leader, you must have personal credibility, and trust and integrity are vital to have that. And I put this quote up there for at least it just really struck me strongly. Like, credibility is earned minute by minute, hour by hour, month by month, year by year, but it can be lost in short order. And when it's lost, it's nearly impossible to earn it back. And I'd like you to think with what we opened this, you know, webinar with, but, you know, auditioning for leadership every time you speak. So your personal credibility is always on display. And as human nature, it's not easy to build that trust, but it's so easy to lose it. Therefore, you know, integrity and trust are very, very, very important. You cannot risk, and you know, you have to really understand every time you're in front of your team, every time you're saying something, every time you're standing in a certain way, it's your team is looking at you. They're taking their cues from you. And that's a big role.
No.
But you signed up for this. You signed up for this, and you have to do it the right way.
Right.
And, you know, leaders are not born. They're you know, developed.
Maybe. I like that term that Kevin put in the notes, social credit. That makes a lot of sense too.
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of the PR. If Erkan, I was going to throw out one more quote for today. Warren Buffett said, Warren Buffett, the billionaire investor, the Oracle of Omaha, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you will do things differently. And that you know, that's hand in hand with what you already said about the credibility. You know, you build up the credibility and you have to maintain it.
Very good. Yes, it's exactly, you know, the same thing in a different way. But the point is the same by someone, you know, who many people admire, Warren Buffett, right? Very good. Okay. So here's what I want to do now, because you know, we're just sort of like going into this whole idea about leadership, leading self, leading people, leading business, but it starts with self. Okay. And the best way we learn as adults is by reflection. So I want to do a little bit of self-reflection here. And I want every one of us to think about some of these questions that you're looking at. All right. Now, in terms of the importance of credibility, we can all agree and we understand why it's there. But, you know, I want you to think with, and if there are any volunteers to really talk to us, because the really best learning happens from your peers, and all of you especially are peers here. You're, you know, from the same environment, you share similar, you know, experiences in terms of your work. But what would my employees say about me as a credible leader? Like, really think about this. Like, what would they say? Right? How do people know that I follow through on my promises and commitments? Actually, are there any specific examples anyone could give from their perspective? How do people know that you follow through on your promises and commitments? Some specific examples that you could think with. And if there's nobody who want to say it, it's okay, but
Well, that's
think
an
about it.
area that I have definitely fallen short, and that's not following through. I might come up with what I think is a great idea, and it has all the intentions of making things better for everyone. And then the execution doesn't happen, or I forget, or I get sidetracked, or I get lost. I think I've dropped the ball on that a few times over the years. And that's one area that I would really like to improve on. I think John talked about it earlier, opening your mouth and just letting it run and then not following up with it. So I know that's an area that I'd like to strengthen.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I feel similar about myself as well. So yeah, it made me think as you spoke.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts, comments about the first two parts of the first two questions up top? How people know that you follow through on your promises and commitments?
Ercon, just to hang on, sorry. I thought I deleted or muted my phone. John can tell you I'm a technological guru. Uh, but just to real quick on the point, uh, what would my employees say about me as a credible leader? I think it's very important to know what your employees would say about you. And one way that I mean, and to the last guy's point, I'm not sure who that. There we go.
Mike,
Not sure who Mike I think was on there, but we all fall short of that sometimes, and nobody's ever going to be perfect. And I'm very bad about, man. I'll have a good run of doing exactly what I want to, what I've set for, reaching the goals and the plans, and then this four-letter word called life happens, and you tend to stray away from those sometimes. And so, it's not the end of the world. Don't think you're an ineffective leader just because you do fall short of that, because I think we all do. But what would your employees say about you as a credible leader? And that is a very important thing, in that we have to invest in our people. We have to invest. My employees know that I am credible to a T, because I'm going to do what I tell them I will do, if it costs me money. If I have to stay up late trying to figure it out, if I have to do things that I don't want to do, they know that because I've done that. They know that because I've set that standard, because I've had examples of things that have come through. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, because I don't think I'm nearly as good a leader as John said that I am. But I've
Speaking in faith, brother, speaking in faith.
well, one of the most awesome things that's happened to me in the past year is I've actually had an employee tell a new hire, "Hey, if he said he's going to do that, it's going to happen." And for your team to back you up on that,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. That's how you
that's
know
that's a
you're-
specific example of what your employees would say about you as a credible leader. Like
exactly.
if he,
They
wow,
know I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, because I've always done that. And no
Right.
matter what if it costs you money, it costs you money. Your credibility is worth more than $1.
very, very powerful.
Thank
Very
you, Ken.
powerful.
Can I throw something in on that point, Ercon? Because
Please.
a similar, sometimes it helps to have an example from another walk of life to help us see things. To your point, Mike and Shannon, about the recrimination of having fallen short. We all fall short. I have a friend that is a minister, and I said to him one time, "Hey, what do you say to people?" Because I heard people say, oh, I don't want to go to church where your friend preaches over there because it's full of hypocrites. And my friend the minister said, is it full of people that wanted to do better than they did? Yes, absolutely. And then he said, if you've never aspired to anything bigger, you know, to be a hypocrite, you have to have in that person's definition, let me say, a person who doesn't live up to what they preach. Sometimes we aspire to more than we can do. And if you've never aspired to anything, if you've never come up short, it's because you haven't aspired to something more. You know, if you never go for it, so you can't kick yourself for coming up short. You can only reorganize and come back to doing the best you can do next time and learn from it.
Kind of like what Kevin said, plan, present, revise, execute, revise again.
That's right.
Yeah. And don't procrastinate like Eran is saying. And Eran, good to see you, by the way. But yeah, I think I want everyone to at least go away with one thing. I mean, there are a few things that we discussed that we want you to do, but think about some of the words to describe your leadership philosophy. Because, you know, it doesn't have to be in writing, but it's better than if it was. And based on what we kind of like, there were some big words we just talked about here, some big concepts maybe, but it's really simple. Like, what is your leadership philosophy? How would you describe it? And you have to stick with that. You know, it doesn't mean it's once and done. It could change. You know, my leadership philosophy is different than 5 years ago, or maybe like, 2 years ago. It changes, of course. But what is it? Where is it today? Based on where you want to go, right? And once you get a better understanding about what that philosophy is and internalize it and live it, you will see that things will become easier. You will see that people will comply a little easier. And they'll say those things about you as a credible leader, whatever you're doing. I mean, they're going to say it no matter what, but it might as well be that they say the right thing. And the right thing is what you show. Okay, so it's very important. But I think think about your leadership philosophy, try to describe it in words, and at the same time, like, do the exercise that John was talking about, and try to improve upon the areas that will make you more effective leader. But this is about entry to self-awareness, self-leadership, and that is going to lead into leading the people, and that is going to lead into leading the business, which makes me think my friend Carolyn is in the right. Well, maybe the second leadership webinar we do should be about leading people. And that would be the second part. And maybe we can all do it. I hope you had a good time. But any parting thoughts from anybody? Because we covered what we wanted to cover, except two things. One is most of you are, I believe, like involved with Drive somehow. And for those of you who are not, we have a service called Shop Business Analysis that you could, sort of like, there will be some information about this. And in fact, that way you can just, Carolyn actually put the SBA link, the SBA, we call it Shop Business Analysis link in the chat. You can sign up for that where we analyze your business. It's kind of like a, scan tool on a vehicle, but we do it on your business and we give you what's good and not so good and how you can improve your business to the next level. And the other thing I want to talk about is the expo that we have in September in Las Vegas. Some of you are already registered. If only registered, book your hotel, or if not, register yourself and come on. It's going to be great in September. But those are the important things. And I believe the QR code on your screen takes you to the expo or SBA. But Carolyn will put it in the chat. But any parting thoughts when we leave? Before we leave, I covered what I wanted to cover. The QR code goes to the SBA page. I'm sorry, but the expo will be there too.
Erkan, I don't want to tell tales out of school, but this might be a good place for you and me to announce that we'll be launching our Tiger Act in Las Vegas at the expo. So if they want to come see you and me with the Tigers, I don't know if this is the right format to launch it, but Ercon and I will have a Tiger Act. We've got some Siegfried and Roy suits, and it's going to be very nice. So,
I was gonna
look,
say, John, what's your you, Siegfried or Roy?
well, I tend to be Roy, but whatever,
Okay.
whatever gets paid. But please come see us at the expo in Vegas. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Very good. Well, thank you all for attending, taking your time. I hope this has been beneficial for you. And we'll do some more of those and we'll go from there. Thanks a lot.